Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings and events. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about legalities and wedding planning. I know, all of a sudden, snooze fest. If you're a wedding planner out there, I know your skin had just crawled. Everything just went to the back of your head. But these are important topics, not only as planners and vendors, but also for couples. I mean, it is important to understand what you need to do to be able to protect yourself, especially in this day and age. And our guest today is the epitome of a perfect guest when it comes to this type of knowledge. Not only is she a lawyer, but also an established and well-known and well-loved event planner. Her name is Leah Weinberg. We're going to bring her on in just a second. But before I do, let me bring on my co-host, Marcy Gutenberg, with an affair to remember by Marcy. Hi, Marcy.
How are you?
Oh, we start talking about the law, and all of a sudden I'm like, what? I don't really want to talk about it. I'm like, I don't want to talk about contracts. What do you mean? I know, because then you get caught up in all of these like legal terms that I'm like, oh, is it peach or blush?
Right.
That's not.
It's a scary world, I think, for a lot of people because they feel very unsure about it. So it's like you have to think about all the nuances of how people read it and interpret it.
And that's the hard part, is because we're so used to like, oh, but we just really want to love everybody, and we just want our clients to be a big family, that it almost feels like the legalities can get in the way. But our guest today is going to help us with that. Yeah.
Yes, she is.
All right, let's bring on Leah. Leah, welcome to the show.
Hi,
Leah.
Thank you. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you for coming. I mean, you've got a lot going on. I mean, a lot. So first of all, I just want to make sure that everybody understands, if you don't know Leah, she is the co-founder of Oduberg? Is that saying that? Oduberg Law, LLP, and co-owner of Contract Template Shop Legally Set. She's an attorney and recovering wedding planner. Love that. And the author of Wedding Roller Coaster. She is, honestly, guys, she is a fantastic event and wedding planner. I mean, she's just like what we try to become, and she's done it. And now has left the world and gone back to law. So there's something there, but we won't talk about that. So, Leah, give us a little history about like where you started, where you were, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I like to say that I'm having my full circle moment now, because I started as an attorney. I practiced law for a total of 10 years, started my wedding planning company, Color Pop Events, while still working as an attorney. So there was some overlap there. Was a wedding planner for about 10 years. And then last year had my very last wedding, launched a law firm at the beginning of this year with a friend of mine.
Wow.
So yep, I've come all the way back around. To my surprise, I swore I was never going to go back to practicing law, and here we are. But I'm finding it's been a really great and rewarding and fulfilling change for sure.
I'm saying, most people, their backup plan is not becoming a lawyer, but okay. I'm just like, I'm kind of impressed with that. I'm like, my mom, I'm sure, would have loved if I had gone to law school and then decided to become a wedding planner. She's like, all right, you have something to back up on. But so, I mean, the fact that you were a lawyer, did that influence when you went into business for yourself and what you did in order to protect yourself in that world?
It did. It helped in a couple of different ways. Obviously, that way of understanding, what you need as a business in terms of the legal foundation. I knew that stuff. I had that knowledge going in, but also it helped me a lot with the people part and just how to be a wedding planner. Like there's a lot of similarities between the two professions in terms of having to deal with multiple projects and multiple clients at the same time, having to problem solve, having to stay calm under pressure, knowing how to deal with difficult people from time to time.
We don't have difficult people. No.
It was really a lot of the same, like making sure you're staying organized. Like at any given time, if I was a lawyer, if I was a wedding planner, like I needed to know where somebody's particular wedding or deal was at any given moment, like knowing how to stay on top of that stuff. So it was a lot of transferable skills, which surprises a lot of people to hear that.
It is actually, because you don't usually like pair the two. I mean, lawyer and event planner or wedding planner. I mean, but did you then put into practices like some of the contracts that we should be doing as event planners? You already had that in place because you were like, okay, I know what the law is. I need to protect myself.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I knew I needed to, from day one, I had an LLC set up for my business because I knew it was better to have an entity rather than operating as an individual. I had that contract in place. I knew that I needed contracts with people that I was hiring to work with me or like virtual assistant stuff. I had that knowledge of what needed to be in place. And I knew the importance of it too, because I saw firsthand what happens when contracts aren't well drafted or there's no contract at all. And so
Well, and we talked about this before we went live, is that, my contract is like a handshake. I'm more like, okay, if you really want to get out of this, you're going to be able to. I mean, there's a lot of holes in there, because I also worry that a 10-page contract will scare people, right?
Yes.
If you get this 10-page contract from somebody that you're supposed to be working with and trusting, it's like, why is there now a 10-page contract? So how did you, as a lawyer going into the wedding business, understanding that it's just a whole different mindset, get to a point where you were able to then explain or make people feel comfortable with the fact that they were signing a contract that was probably a little bit more solid than most of us?
Yes, I like to say my contract was probably the most aggressive contract you would have come across.
Whoa.
I mean, it had in there that if you even want to reschedule, then that's a termination, and I get to keep all of your money and collect the balance of.
Well, I mean, I have that, but it's like not quite the same. But yeah.
I obviously never did that when that happened, but so I'm glad you brought up the point about feeling that the length of a contract can be intimidating, can be scary. Because I hear that a lot from our clients, because they'll have shorter agreements. And then when I send them back the revised version, they're like, this is too intense. I don't want to freak anybody out. I don't want to scare them away. And what I tell them is that, I mean, we've been drafting. I mean, like we've spent this year drafting contracts for people. And I always tell them, I say, if once you put this into practice, if you get anybody that says, I'm not signing this, this is too scary, come talk to me. Nobody has come to talk to me yet, because I don't want your contract to lose you business, because what happens is there's ways to make it look a little bit less intimidating, which I definitely will do for clients. But then what happens is, yes, people look at it and they're like, oh my God, this is 10 pages. This is scary. But the idea is once they start reading it, that it makes sense. And it's also important that the vendor understand the contract so that they know how to defend it when they get questions about it. But once
that was literally going to be my next question.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah. But and I felt like that's what I was just talking to somebody this week who was like, yeah, I had somebody who pushed back on the contract originally, but once they started reading it, they actually understood why it is in there, what things meant, and all of that stuff.
But how do you get past that? I mean, so as a wedding planner, I don't practice law. I have zero understanding of law. My mother's a lawyer, thank God, because she's the one that actually put together my contract as it is, thank God. But, I mean, it's not like I can go to like LegalZoom or something like that in order to draft a contract as a wedding planner, nor do I understand, even in my own contract, all of the words or definitions that are in there. I mean, how important is that you have to understand that your own contract in order to defend it?
Critical.
So,
yes.
Has to be.
So one of the things that I do when I'm doing revisions or drafting a new contract for somebody, we will have a call where I go from top to bottom and I explain everything that's in there. I call out the provisions that I know clients are most likely going to push back on. I point out the stuff that's more complicated so that we go slower through that section so that you understand it. And I think what you can do if you have a longer contract, if you get a client who like initially is like, ooh, this is very lengthy, let them know, like just be really sort of kind about it and say, hey, I understand this can be a little intimidating. but read through it. I think once you read through it, you'll see that stuff makes sense. If you have questions, comments, like let's have a conversation about it. Don't let this be just an immediate blocker. So it's about how you're kind of like almost selling your contract in a way too.
But I mean, do you need to then, do you have to explain it to the clients? Because we've gotten so used to scroll and click, I mean, anything that's an Apple client.
I don't encourage you to like go through it from top to bottom with the clients, but let them know that you're available for questions. If they have comments, you're open to discussions about any concerns that they have. So don't make them feel that this is like don't make them feel like it's a take it or leave it. Definitely make them feel like it can be a collaborative thing.
Well, because like Marcy, I mean, we were talking about this, is that your contracts actually do have to be a little bit lengthier because of the world you're in. Talk about that.
So my contract actually is about 5 to 6 pages. The 6th page is really just, like your final signature. Everything else is about, the real contract. And then I have addendums. And the reason why I have addendums is I will often put the package in one of the addendums. I will probably put the wording in another addendum, and then maybe some extraneous things that are not necessarily in the contract that I want to make sure are highlighted.
Yeah. So, are those the things, those type of things, because the wording is going to be in the invitation, it has to be then approved between you and the client, because it's like word for word, and you don't want their invitation to be like, oh, there's a misspelling here. And you're like, well, you signed off on it.
Right. I want to make sure that everything is accurate, that they're reading it, not once or, not even twice, but they're reading it like 3 times, because they get it in the contract. They will get it in approved. They'll get it in the final. So they're reading it over and over just to make sure that, there's no changes, there's no corrections or anything like that. But I'll also do an addendum to it sometimes if somebody does have a change or correction or addition, because I want to make sure that they're definitely like we are all on the same page, that this is what we're going to do.
That's actually a really good question, because, well, the 2 parts. So the first part is, obviously we need to have different contracts for different professions, right? A wedding planner needs to have a different contract than an invitation professional versus a DJ or a band or a photographer, right? Yep. The second part of that is the addendums. I always have a really hard time with having clients do addendums, because then, it's part of the process. You're talking and they're like, oh, can you just help out with, doing our rehearsal dinner? It's like, well, I'm happy to give you some suggestions, but after that, and it's like, but then all of a sudden I get sucked into it. So I have a real hard time figuring out when to broach that subject. So like, first, let's talk about the different kinds of contracts for different people.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the vendors, it's typically kind of the same. There's a lot of similar provisions and a lot of overlap amongst the different vendor contracts. But then, yes, all the vendors will have their very specific things. So when it comes to DJs talking about how much setup space that they need or what the client is providing, do they need to provide a table with a linen? If it's photographers, we talk about how much time they might be allotting for the portrait sessions during the day. We talk about how subjective of a service photography is. If it's catering, we talk about allergies. We talk about changes in market prices to things. If it's planners, we're talking about their responsibility for the budget. We talk about making snap decisions, like in your professional judgment on the day of the wedding, and not having disagreement with those decisions, being room for like a request for a refund after the wedding. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap, but then there are those very vendor specific provisions that people are getting to.
So then how do you broach that subject when you're talking about addendum? So let's say that I have a wedding, and this actually just happened, and they did ask for advice about a rehearsal dinner. And before I knew it, I was planning this huge rehearsal dinner for 180 people that was about the same size as a wedding. And I was like, okay, wait, how did I end up all of a sudden here? And I'm not making any additional money for it yet. My original contract very specifically states that if you want help with a rehearsal dinner, but I needed to get the addendum. How do you broach that subject?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is to make sure that your original contract makes it clear what's included in the services for the price stated in the contract and what's going to be outside of that. So like, kudos to you for having the contract to fall back on, because that it can make it a little bit easier, because when you get those requests, you're at least able to say, hey, per my contract, adding this on is going to be this much more money, or we need to talk about it. Part of it just has to be, I mean, I was a wedding planner for 10 years. I know, like, we're people pleasers. We just have to get out of our own way sometimes, because we end up, my biggest thing I would always say, like, if people were talking about discounts and stuff, I would always say, don't ever discount, or like, don't ever, make sure you're charging enough so that at the end of the day, you're not going to resent your clients.
Ooh,
And
yeah, that's
so
good.
like, if you are finding, okay, I'm giving in a little bit, I'm doing this extra work for the rehearsal dinner, it's really like, I'm starting to have some feelings and this is making me kind of like not happy, then like
Yeah.
that is your key to make sure that you are charging for those things, because you don't want to resent your client. You want it to be like, that's just not going to make you a happy wedding planner if we're always in those situations. So yeah, we got to put I mean, I know it's tough. We just have to put the kind of like people pleasing, wanting to like go above and beyond aside.
I feel like I need to do that sooner than later, because as we get closer to the wedding, you know, money goes flying out the door like the last 3 weeks of the wedding, because all the final payments are done. And it's like, okay, that's not the time to broach the subject. I should have done it,
it's
before
you
that.
like yeah, I mean, ideally it's happening before you even agree to say it. Like, you get the request, hey, can we get your help with the rehearsal dinner? Yes, it's X amount of dollars. Let's sign an amendment, or even, let's sign an amendment to document it. Theoretically, you can also agree in an email to document that if you don't want to like do a formal amendment to the contract.
Oh,
so that's actually a good question. So you can have the client send you an email, or you can send the client an email, line it out for them, and have them say, yes, that is all true, or
that was exactly my question. I was like, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going to go back to law school a little bit, because there are three things that you need to make a contract. You need an offer, you need acceptance, and then you need the consideration. So a lot of people talk about being careful to not accidentally enter into binding contracts via email. So like, if it's your intent, if it's the client's intent to say, hey, let's get this done by email, then you're going to put in an email, here's the additional services I'm offering, here is the amount, this is when you're going to pay that amount. They reply back, yes, that's good. We're agreeing to hire you for those additional services. We're agreeing to pay you that additional amount. You've satisfied those three things, and that becomes a binding obligation.
It doesn't need a signature, just needs the email address.
It can just be email, as long as they're
Really?
signed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So if they contact you via phone, they have a conversation with you, you know what you need to say to them, and you're going to add in there and refer to your contract for pricing.
I would say, well, if you're, I would just reiterate the pricing.
Well, and that's actually important when we talk to like hotels and venues. I tell couples all the time, I'm like, it's great that the catering salesperson says that they're going to make sure that this, and this are done. But what happens when that catering manager leaves and goes to a different hotel?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any proof? Anything in writing, anything 100%. Outside of a voicemail. Yep. And so that makes sense that actually is a legally binding kind of thing. What happens when it's another organization, such as, and I'll give you a perfect example of this because this just happened to me. I got into a contract for a wedding that's happening in February at Sunset Cove, which is part of Seaquarium in Miami. And then Seaquarium decided to get rid of that management company, went to a new management company, said that the old contract was no longer valid. And not only did we have to go into a new contract, but our price point changed for the rental.
Ooh.
Yeah, this all just happened.
That's
like
really
literally, this all just happened. And thank you, Seaquarium. You know, I'm going to give you the big middle finger for this. Because I don't care. Pissed me off.
That's
anyway, but no, seriously, like, come on, what are you gonna do? We signed the new contract so they can, kiss my butt. But seriously, no, I mean, how do you? First of all, you're a company like Seaquarium, right? You authorized another management company to go into an agreement with you. I mean, if we had more time to fight it in court, we would have. But it's February. It's like. By the time we get it through the court system, it's going to be 6 months after the wedding. So, what are your thoughts on this?
That seems like they're
shady.
I mean, presumably there are, and it also too depends on, the contract that your client signed with them, and if it was just the management company that signed it, or if Seaquarium also signed it, but you would want specific language. I mean, that seems very like there should be documentation that shows that they should be liable. Actually, one thing, potential, you could potentially bring an action post-wedding to try to recoup the price difference.
Yeah, because I mean, it wasn't insignificant. I mean, it's going to end up being like $3,000 or $4,000 because
Yeah.
the previous company included tables, they included the restroom trailer, and now the new company does not. And
That's
then,
wild.
yeah, it was just the craziest moment. But this is like one of those things that when we were talking and we knew that you were coming on, I was like, oh my God, I really want to talk about this
Yeah.
because it threw me for a huge loop as a wedding planner that's here to protect my client. The original contract I thought was pretty direct and straightforward. I mean, I went
Yeah.
through it and went, okay, I understand this. I understand how the sequarium is protecting itself, and I know what the client rights are. But
Yeah.
then to have the management company completely fired, and then be told that, okay, not only do you not have your date secured, but we are not honoring any of the previous contracts
That's
at all.
mm-mm.
I know
Also, that's bad. But I mean, like, regardless of what the contract says, that's also
Mhm.
just bad business.
Well, I mean, if you've been
That's
following
like strong
Sequarium,
arming you.
yeah, if you've been following the Sequarium, they haven't been doing exactly the greatest thing lately, but still, I mean, it's such a beautiful location, and the couple just fell in love with it. Obviously, we're going to do everything we can to keep it, but
Yeah.
it is a $4,000 hit that they weren't expecting.
That's really
Wow.
unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, super unfortunate, but
Yeah.
Again, I love the idea about post wedding.
Yes.
Because that does give us a little bit more time to then understand like all the legalities around it. But this is where
and your final costs.
Right. But this is where
Yeah.
this kind of scary syndrome comes into play, because
Yeah.
anytime, let's say that, I get a notice that I'm being sued for a wedding that happened a year ago because
Yeah.
they were unhappy with the weather.
Yep.
Like, is that a possibility? And is that something that I need to think about for my contract? Like, do I have to put in my contract that I am not responsible for the weather? Or is that something that's considered normal and customary?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. Like, I was just working with a planner client today who has a weather provision in their contract.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
God, I mean, I just never thought, and literally I didn't think about it till literally as we we're just talking, thinking about, oh my God, because how many times have I been told by a bride that I want to keep it outside as long as possible, but yet the hotel has a separate, piece of their saying that 3 hours before the rain call is made.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I feel like weather is the universal like thread that's the bane of every wedding vendor's existence.
So true. It is so true. It's the worst.
Yeah. So two things that what you just said made me realize. Number one is like I'm encouraging folks that when you do get that notice, if you do get that email post-wedding that somebody's unhappy, ideally I want you to talk to an attorney before you respond, because I don't want you to like, again, accidentally be offering something in your response back that's going to end up being binding on you. I don't want you to apologize.
Good. Yeah.
Because we don't like, a lot of times we get those, we want to make it go away and we'll say whatever we have to. And then 24, 48 hours later, we've had some time to cool off. We've had some time to think about it. And we're like, oh my, this had nothing to do with me. I'm really upset that I apologized for this, or that I offered them or agreed to whatever in the email. So I really do think people should talk to an attorney beforehand. And also, this sounds cheesy, but part of why I find this work so fulfilling now is because like I want to make the law less scary for wedding professionals. I understand the industry. I know I know about your job. I know what your pain points are. I know,
which is amazing, actually.
I know what clients are going to complain about. And so like we're limited by the number of states that we can practice in, but we're trying to expand that slowly. But also like, I'm happy just to have informal conversations with people. Like if they need something or need a recommendation, want law, because law can be scary. Like contracts are scary. A lot of times when you're talking to an attorney, it's because it's a scary situation because somebody's threatening to sue you. So like myself and Kumbi, my business partner, we are trying to make this more approachable, have people feel taken care of, almost like infusing a hospitality component into the law.
What do you do about threats against your reputation? So, and again, I'm taking from a personal experience, and this has only happened once in 20 years, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. And bad karma on you two out there, but
you know who you are.
You know who you are. But we worked like dogs to make sure that this wedding was amazing, and there were some other issues of some of the vendors that they chose, not that we chose, that they chose, that we tried to work with, and it created some drama. But at the end of the day, the wedding went beautifully. But the threat afterwards was, if you don't give me money back, I'm going to write a bad review. And I wanted to reach through the phone and rip her eyes out, because I'm like, how dare you threaten my reputation? Because you're not saying I did a bad job. She didn't say that. What she said is, I'm unhappy and I want money back from somebody, was basically what she was saying.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
If you're my softest target, I'm going to go after you.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the thing that you can remind those people in those situations that like defamation is a crime. And so lying about the services and all of that stuff, like theoretically that is actionable. You can bring a lawsuit against somebody for defamation, whether it's verbal or written. Yeah, it's tough. I think it's interesting because I've been having these conversations a lot, because we're seeing client disputes start to happen more and more. And so one of the things that you actually have to analyze is sort of the person's rationality level. Like, are they rational human beings? Do you think, like, what's the level that they're going to take this? Because some people are going to take it to a place you could never imagine. And those are the people that sometimes you might have to give money back to in order to keep it from escalating like that. And sometimes you might get a sense like it's that they're bluffing, and you might be able to, in that situation, you might be able to get away with, well, I'm getting my attorney involved. And so you can discuss, you can either get your own representation or you can have this conversation with my attorney, because sometimes getting an attorney involved, that gets them to back off real quickly. And then other times there are those people who are not rational at all, and they will take you to court.
Well, you know, the sad thing about all of this is that it was the very first time that it had ever happened. I mean, I had never had anybody come back. I mean, it was like wreaked havoc on my peace of mind. Like, oh my God, I have somebody that's not happy. I'm like, oh, I did, you know, and of course, as a self-hating wedding planner, you know, of course it's my fault. Oh my God, what did I do? Oh, I must have said something. Oh, what did I eat? Exactly. And then, you know, and of course the angst of replaying everything that I did. And of course I was going to be the softie. So of course I'm like, okay, oh my God. And of course I did exactly what you said not to. I immediately responded like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you're not happy. What can I do? I'm like, whatever you need.
I have a question about that.
Whatever you need. That got me. That's the thing.
That's actually a good point, Keith, because I do want to ask you, typically when somebody says something and you come back and say, I'm sorry, or I apologize, or something like that, then doesn't that provide more of an ownership that you're owning the problem and that you're accepting the blame?
Yeah. Yeah. And theoretically,
really?
Like if it ever went to court, they're of course they're going to use that email in court, just like you're going to use any prior correspondence or text messages where they were like, we're so happy, this is great, you're the best wedding planner ever. And then
which is what I got.
Flip on you. Yeah, like I've seen it with photographers where the clients love the engagement photos, like sent such glowing things. They love their sneak peeks, and then all of a sudden they get their full gallery and they're asking for money back because they think the photos are terrible. And it's like, no, we're going to show you, we have you liked our work. You essentially pre-approved our work. So this, whatever you say in that email can be held against you, just like anything they say in an email or text, like you're going to use that to support your side as well.
So here's the one thing that I'm going to broach this subject is that when I hear hiring a lawyer, I hear cha-ching.
Right.
Cha-ching, 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 right? So at what point does it make sense? And the reason I didn't actually bring in a lawyer into this thing, because it was going to cost me less money to get her to shut up and go away than it was going to cost me to hire a lawyer and get involved. So, I mean, that's a scary area as well, because a lot of people are small businesses. They typically don't have the funds to be able to have an attorney, you know, on the books, so to speak. Like, where do we draw the line on that?
Yeah. So part of another one of my like soapbox things is to start that relationship with the attorney before you actually need one. And part of the reason there is you understand their fee structure and how they charge. And I want you to find an attorney that you like, that fits with what you do, fits what you can afford. Like, for example, some attorneys, yes, they're going to require a retainer. So that means you're giving them a chunk of money up front, and they're going to build, like, as they work from you, they're going to like take out of that. Other people charge on a flat fee basis. Other people charge hourly. Some people can do any combination of these things. So it's important to know your attorney and have that person up front, so that when things do go wrong, you have somebody to call, you know how much it's going to cost you. You can do that exact cost benefit analysis of like, does it make sense to get the attorney involved, or am I just going to end up paying them money back regardless and having to pay the attorney on top of that? So there's plenty of times I have calls with small business owners and wedding vendors who are like, hey, I just want to get on your radar. I want to understand how you charge and how you work. I want to tell you a little bit about me. So that way, when something happens, we're not having to like go through all that preliminary stuff. Like, you know that you can call me. And yes, there are lawyers out there. I love it. I mean, they're like, oh, you thought about my matter in the shower. You're like billing me time while you're thinking about or while I'm driving a car. Like, I can't deny, I'm sure there are attorneys like that out there, which is why, again, it's worth shopping around. It's worth getting referrals to find somebody that you trust. Because if you don't like your attorney, if you don't trust your attorney, that is going to be so bad for the relationship, because you're going to be in vulnerable situations with your attorney. Like, you need to be able to just be honest with them, lay things out for them, and you need to trust that they're going to have your back as well.
So how do you find a good attorney? I mean, it's like asking somebody that's never planned a wedding before, how do you find a good wedding planner? I mean,
it's a lot of it is word of mouth. And again, the shopping around too. Like, don't be afraid to just have initial calls with people and like take the temperature and see how you're feeling after those initial calls. Hopefully, more and more people, like with the message I'm trying to spread, like hopefully more and more people are starting to find their own attorneys. And so that way we can like sort of amongst the people in the wedding industry start having these people knowing people who they can refer to people. And also like our firm is hoping to be able to work with those folks in other states. So that way, like you get our and my like specific industry knowledge, but you're getting somebody in the state who can make sure it's in compliance with all your state stuff. So
I'm assuming there's different attorneys for different things, because we all seen the injury attorneys in the 411 pain, who, by the way, were a very interesting couple. I did plan their wedding, but I mean, what kind of attorney do typical like event pros need?
Yeah, they generally need a transactional, like small business or just business attorney. So somebody who's going to be able to draft contracts for them, somebody who knows employment rules and laws in their particular state. So when you're hiring people, they can advise you on that. It helps if they have some intellectual property knowledge. Like if you need to file for trademarks or if you've got copyright disputes, they can help you with those things. Litigators, a lot of times, like people who's your typical small business attorney is not also going to be able to represent you in court. Those are usually two very different skill sets. Wow. One of the things that I'm lucky, I did commercial real estate law in my original career. And so when people are leasing like office space or spaces for their business and things like that, I'm actually able to do that, which is pretty convenient. I would say most small business attorneys probably aren't able to like go quite that broad.
I was about to say, I mean, you are kind of a pearl, right? I mean, it doesn't seem that like there's a lot of people out there that have your experience of being able to be
definitely a unicorn,
right? A planner and a lawyer that is also able to do a lot of these other things. I mean, it's a rare find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So again, that's why like we're networking. Like whenever anybody in another state's like, oh, I have a really good attorney, I'm like, please connect me with them. I want to build that relationship to be able to refer people, because your attorney should be part of your team. It shouldn't be
Right.
viewed as like a luxury thing to be able to do. And
Mm,
real quick, one thing that somebody
true.
pointed out to me recently was to consider pricing yourself in a way where you're able to sort of have a little bit of buffer if you do have one of these client disputes in a year and you're having to give back some money, or if you need to like prepare for hiring an attorney. Like it is a cost of doing business. So we should all be just making sure that like our pricing reflects some of this stuff that might be happening.
That's so smart. I mean, the thing, and with this new law practice that you're building, is it going to be something that, because you talked about coming into Florida and coming into other states, are you building like a kind of a networking event, or how do I even put this? Like multiple offices in multiple places that everybody has, like, thank you, like a franchise, almost like a franchise.
So yeah, sort of, yes. Yeah.
Not legally speaking. I should
right,
have
not
said
legally.
like,
Yeah, not legally.
I forgot. I'm talking to a lawyer. I can't.
I can neither confirm nor deny. No, just kidding. Yes, our hope. Yeah, what we're looking into kind of like the format, like the actual method of how a law firm can bring folks in from other states to have them essentially work under their law firm umbrella. So yeah, we are targeting some states to try to like expand to. And then again, even if there's some places where it doesn't make sense to maybe make an attorney from that state part of our team, I am always looking for referrals and just building relationships in those places, so that when I get somebody in like Utah, or I think I had somebody in North Dakota, they're like, please come to North Dakota. I'm like, I have no contacts in North Dakota right now,
like,
but
what?
But yeah,
is that a state?
If somebody has a great recommendation for me, like I would love to hear it, because I just want to build. I want to just I really do. I'm like on a mission. I want to make sure wedding pros are taken care of and be able to like make sure that they're legally protected, because so many people are kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
And I'm thinking, Dakota, I love her as an actress. What are you talking about? I know, it's a stupid joke. Anyway, but I mean, and this is something that I think that our community is really in need of. I mean, there aren't a lot of, I feel like either you're a lawyer that is in charge of a huge entertainment company that, you know, basically defends stars, or you're another type of lawyer. There's nobody really focused on the wedding and event industry to help them out, because that really is a specialty. It's a niche.
It is.
It's definitely a niche.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, so for example, with a photographer client who had an issue, I mean, one of the first things I said, whose clients were unhappy with the photos, I said, let me see the gallery. Like, I know what good photos are. And so like, and the photos were beautiful. And I know that from a perspective, like I have just a specific knowledge. And the couple was complaining about one shot. They were like, oh, people are blurry in the background and like their heads are cut off. It was a detail shot of the groomsmen holding their like custom flasks. And I'm like, of course they're blurry and heads are cut off, because the photo is of the flasks.
Right. Well,
like,
you know what?
But another attorney's not going to be able to articulate that or have any idea like what to do with that type of complaint. So,
by the way, this was on People's Court. By the way, this is like literally what you're saying. I just remember this. It was
really?
Yes, it was a People's Court, and the judge said, "I don't know what you're talking about. These photos are beautiful." And they're like, "But the heads are cut off." She goes, "Because they're taking a picture of your hands." And I just laughed out loud. I couldn't help myself. I literally laughed out loud at the TV, because as us, we're like, well, duh. But I guess a lot other people out there just have a different mindset. Oh my God.
Well, like you said before, you were talking before about, being outside and having an outside event, and then it rains. I mean, we can't control the rain. Right. You can't control the rain.
So let me ask you a final question. What do you think is the biggest mistake that us as event pros make legally?
Not having a high quality contract.
Really?
Because
from the very beginning.
Yeah, because that contract is going to do so much to help prevent the stuff from going wrong at the end of at the end of the process, because like when things aren't up to people's expectations or people feel like one side's not doing their job, you should be able to fall back on your contract and know exactly what to do in those situations.
So invest your time in the contract.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile investment.
Oh my God. Leah, do you love the law more or do you love events more?
I gotta be honest, I am finding this new law thing like surprisingly fulfilling. Like it feels what I'm experiencing right now is how I felt at the beginning of my wedding planning business. Like being able to help people, being able to like bring their day to life, like so excited. And so now it's like, I'm so excited to be helping my former colleagues.
Let's see what you say in 10 years.
I know, Colin. I mean, like, yeah, I feel like I'm on a 10-year cycle of everything anyway.
I was about to say in 10 years. Go ahead, Marcy. Sorry.
Is that because you feel that you've gotten more into the niche of what you really enjoy, where you have the wedding and the law?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I swore I would never go back to practicing law, and I realized what I disliked so much of my first go around had a lot to do, honestly, like with the people I worked with and the people I worked for and like the clients I had no control over. And so I loved running my own business when I was a wedding planner. Like I love being a business owner. And so being able to do that, have control over what I'm doing. And I like the sort of like nerdy, like academic exercise of drafting things and thinking of all the weird stuff that could possibly go wrong at weddings and making sure we're talking about it.
I love that. I mean, I love the fact that this is your forte, man. I feel like this is like where you were meant to be after all this time.
It really is. I mean, it really does feel like that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
You know, you could speak about this at like Cater Source or any of these.
I am. Yeah.
Oh, because this would be an amazing topic for.
Yeah, I have a really fun. I just did it at Wedding MBA.
You did. Oh, nice.
You did.
The worst that could happen. And so we talk about some of it's fun because I get to talk about the horror stories. And then it's also educational because we talk about like just actually tangible stuff you can do to kind of deal with these things before they actually happen.
Oh my God, Leah, you have been amazing. Oh my God, I could just continue to talk, but I don't want to like drag this out because I want people to listen to the whole thing. Thank you so much for being on this show. I can't say thank you enough. I mean, this has been enlightening in so many ways and really funny on so many others on the very scary part.
A lot of great advice.
Yeah, I'm sure Seaquarium's going to come after me for defamation. Excellent. But everything I said was true. Just saying. Thank you again, Leah, for being on the show. I really, truly appreciate it. Marcy, of course, always for being on the show. We will be taking off the next couple of weeks, by the way, ladies and gentlemen out there, to celebrate the holidays, but we will be back in the new year for season 5. What? Killing me, season 5. All right, but until then, we're going to say goodbye. Everybody say goodbye.
Bye.